Hello everybody, this is Professor Andrew Hill, and this is a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306, here at St. Philip's College. We're doing the online version. We're in week number 4. Like I said, it's Thursday, February the 8th, 2018, and we're looking at Chapter 4, The Power of Moral Theories, in our book, Doing Ethics by Vaughn. And so what we want to do is talk a little bit about the two big ideas that get introduced in this chapter, and then start talking about how this applies to our case study for the weekend due Sunday night at midnight. So the short version is this. In chapter 4, because we're going to do 4, 5, and 6 together as a block. In chapter 4, what happens is we get introduced to this concept of a moral theory. It talks about the power of moral theories. What's a moral theory? The definition is just it's an explanation for what makes an action right. What makes and again, the definition of the book is what makes a person or thing good. Now, we can talk a little bit more broadly about that. A moral theory is a framework. It's something in which we have as a foundation for making difficult moral decisions. That kind of theory is something which would provide guidance to us. Again, this is a general theory that we have, which will help us when we have to make particular, specific moral decisions. And they introduce here in chapter 4 what we're going to see more of in 5 and 6, which is this kind of big divide between two schools of thought. The first is consequentialism, and the second he just calls nonconsequentialism to distinguish it between the two. And look, right out of the book, he says, consequentialist theory, a theory asserting that what makes an action right is its consequences. So let's think about that. So you're faced with a decision, and you're looking ahead to the outcomes. Consequences matter. We need to look and see what are the implications of our decision, what's going to happen. Is that good? Is that bad? And then determine the rightness or wrongness, determine the course of action based upon those outcomes. That's consequentialism. It's looking at the consequences to determine the right thing to do. And as we'll see, non-consequentialist theory is just the opposite of that. It's using anything else to determine but accept those outcomes. You might know the consequences are there. You might like them. You might not like them. But the point here is that you're not going to use them to determine what's the right thing to do. You're going to make that decision based on some other factor, like, for example, a moral framework that's grounded in a set of rules or principles. We've seen this already with some of the objectivists thinking about this. Now, and we'll see that these decisions that we have to face, like the case studies we're going to be looking at, a lot of them, it kind of seems intuitive to us that we would naturally think about the outcomes. That's going to be a factor. So when we talk about consequentialist thinking, I want to make sure that we have an understanding that it's not that we know about the consequences, or it's not that we like the consequences. It's this whole piece about using them to make the decision. Because we'll see with non-consequentialist thinking that a lot of times the folks, they do know the outcomes, but they're not going to kind of use that. They're going to find some other way as the standard for making an ethical decision. That's the big divide we see laid out here in chapter 4. So when we get to the case study, when we start talking about it and writing about it, I want you to be thinking, as you approach this, you have to make a decision. And then we push into, okay, now that we've made that decision, why? Why do we think this was the right thing to do? Why do we think that other thing is bad? When we look at that foundation there, is that we're considering the outcomes? Or are we relying on something else in order to make the decision? That's the big divide here. So look, read chapter 4, The Power of Moral Theories. they start to break down into some examples: utilitarianism, Kant's theory. These things get introduced and then developed in greater detail in chapter 5 and then chapter 6. But for now, let's just start with this basic concept. It's covered in the text. They have the definitions are in the quick review boxes. Think about those and then apply them to our case. And I'll spend a little time tomorrow talking about the analysis of the case study using these terms. For now, if you've got any questions, as always, just let me know. Give me a call, contact me. But other than that, good luck reading and thinking and writing. And we'll do more of that soon. Take care. Bye-bye.